Tonight on Crossfire, Colorado experiments with marijuana.
Leave the weed smokers alone. Weed's never killed nobody.
As of this week, buying and selling pot is okay in Colorado. Should the rest of the country get in line?
I think we are setting an example for other states.
On the left, Van Jones. On the right, Newt Gingrich. In the Crossfire, Ellen St. Pierre, who's leading the national fight for legalization, and former Congressman Patrick Kennedy, who's against it. Should marijuana be legal nationwide? Tonight on Crossfire.
Welcome to Crossfire. I'm Newt Gingrich on the right.
And I'm Van Jones on the left. In the Crossfire tonight, we've got two leaders in the fight for and against legalizing pot. Now, this week, thousands of people in Colorado stood in line to buy legal pot. Here's where I stand. I hate drug use and drug abuse. I've seen the harm that it's done to good people and families and neighborhoods. But I hate the drug war even more. It wastes money, it ruins lives, and the numbers now show that it unfairly targets people of color and the poor. This is one case where the solution is actually worse than the disease itself. So at this point, I support marijuana decriminalization, but I also want to regulate it and tax it and discourage its use. I don't want my kids or yours using drugs. I just don't want anybody's kids going to prison if they do.
Well, look, I think we can start with the agreement that the war on drugs has not worked, that it has ruined a lot of lives, but that we also know from the 1890s that a totally unregulated use of drugs leads to devastating result, which is part of where the Food and Drug Act came from. So I think tonight's conversation will be very important and very interesting. We have two terrific guests. In the Crossfire tonight, former Democratic Congressman, I must say, personal friend Patrick Kennedy, who's an advocate for brain research, and Alan St. Pierre, the Executive Director of NORML, the National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws. Let me start, Patrick, with you, if I might. You've had personal experience. You've been up with the country about it, that you've had difficulties with addiction at times. You've also become a real leader in brain research and have done amazing work at Brown University and elsewhere. From your perspective, all these people who are standing in line in Colorado are doing something wrong and dangerous. Could you explain to them why you are concerned and why you think they should be concerned with what they're doing?
Well, it is helpful to know where I'm coming from. I'm a recovering drug addict and alcoholic, and I'm blessed to be in recovery today. It wasn't always that way. I didn't have periods of addiction. I have a chronic illness I have to fight every single day. I also had the honor working with you, Mr. Speaker, in the legislature for pushing for mental health and addiction coverage. And I was proud, like that Hair Club for Men ad you saw about a generation ago, that not only was I the author of Mental Health Parity and Addiction, but I was also a consumer of benefits known as addiction benefits and mental health benefits. So I also have mental illness. And I want to say that because it informs my thinking on this. I'm also now a father of 3 under 5. And the reason I'm here is for them. And it's not trite when I say that the biggest concern I have in this whole move towards legalization is the impact on our young people. Not only our adolescents, for whom a reduced kind of perception of harm that will come with legalization will bring, and of course there will be higher use rates amongst young people as a result. It's also going to be more accessible because of legalization, even if you're selling to 21 and over. We just know that there's going to be more availability. That's beyond doubt. I'm also concerned about the unintended consequences, like we've seen just yesterday with a toddler 2 years old eating an edible, as it's called. None of us know what that means, but in Colorado they're starting to learn what it means. It means that there are now foodstuffs made with THC content. That is troubling. And so my view is we ought to have this debate, and I really appreciate Van and Mr. Speaker, you taking us and having this opportunity to talk about it, because it's one that hasn't happened, frankly. I think Colorado and Washington State got into this without this debate really taking place.
Well, I mean, what's wrong with what he just said? He just described something that seems bad. Do you disagree with the concept?
No, I completely agree, and thank you for being so open about addiction problems. I come from a family that treats addiction specialties, and so I appreciate this wholly. So we're talking, I think, really about use versus abuse. People who use marijuana, adults in their home, notably, they're not a concern to society, I would argue. Now, if you abuse marijuana as a youth, or you drink and drive, you come to work impaired, of course, mores and values in the United States wouldn't allow for such. So I think that in many respects, there's not many places that Patrick and I disagree, except for
the most important issue, which is whether or not it should be criminalized.
Whether it should be legal or not. I mean, because ultimately, the position that Patrick's group, SAM, has adopted effectively is at least decriminalization. You should not be arrested and put into jail just because you have a small amount of marijuana. Is that fair to say?
It's fair to say. I, like Van, think the war on drugs is an abomination. What it's done to our country, the cost to taxpayers. I like the work you're doing, Mr. Speaker, on right on crime.
Exactly.
The fact is, we have a public health crisis. We incarcerate too many people with addiction, substance use disorders. The challenge now is, what are our solutions? And I don't believe that opening up this notion that this is harmless by legalizing is the right message to send.
Well, I think it's good that you raise that. I mean, that's your view, but here's what's so interesting to me. I want to show you some numbers here. The country is actually moving away from your point of view dramatically. 1993, you look at that number, that's the year I graduated from law school. 25% of people said, let's legalize this stuff. Now, 58%. So what is happening that the country is moving away from your position so dramatically if what you're saying is true? I mean, you think the American people are just wrong on this?
No, I think, Van, there's a disconnect between what the science tells us and the broader understanding in the American public.
What does the science say?
Well, the
you're
science...
the brain guy. I'm going to tell you right now, as a political guy, people in your position are losing. So what is the science? What is the science?
I don't argue with you on that, okay, man? I would say the science, every major medical organization and scientific arm that studies the brain says this is not good for the brain.
Says marijuana is not good for the brain.
Marijuana is not good for the brain. So now we have to argue, Van, what are the proper policy solutions that are going to reduce incidence? So we have an agreement. If older people want to use it, that's not my worry. My worry is kids. But there are implications. When you allow older people to have free reign, there are trade-offs. We have to understand that the public health science shows that by giving that 22-year-old the right to smoke, there are consequences to that. And the consequences are there's going to be greater availability, greater access, and the consequences are there's going to be greater use rates. That is beyond any debate whatsoever. So if you are okay with that, then let's go forward. Well, but I say okay that's not a good thing for our country.
Mr. Speaker, are you okay with that? I mean, I'm curious to know
I agree with what he just said at the end, which is it's not good for the country. And Alan, one of the questions I'd ask, if you go back to the 1890s, Sherlock Holmes actually uses drugs. People widely use drugs. All of a sudden, we reached a moment where people said there were so many folks who were addicted that they had a very dramatic change in attitude between about 1900 and 1910. Mm-hmm. Are there any circumstances, and I realize you spent your lifetime working on this, so I'm putting you on the spot. Are there any circumstances looking down the road 5 or 10 years from now where there could be an outcome in places like Colorado that would lead you to say, maybe this wasn't the right policy? I mean, what would the benchmark be that we've gone so far that you'd want to rethink it?
Because this is described rightly as an experiment. These two states have been given the ability under our democracy, under federalism, to do this. So the things that I fear, certainly if we saw a dramatic, demonstrable increase in youth rates, that they were having access to these potent products like concentrates, as they're now known. These are hash products, you guys, that are now made to be even stronger. These edible products that in some cases are marketed and put into candy form, and we have these concerns anyways regarding almost any product that children could have access to. The other concern to me would be...
I appreciate that, Alan. Frankly, I don't think a lot of public knows about this candy stuff or the vending machines that we ran into when we had tobacco products.
Are you in favor of vending machines for these edibles? I'm learning even here on this show. So are you saying you would be in favor of vending machines putting out marijuana products?
Not for recreational use. However, I don't want to make. I'm going to make an over-the-counter stock that I do not own here. There's MedBox, this company out of Los Angeles, where it's a biometric machine where you have to use your own thumbprint. It's tagged to your own Social Security number, your own banking account, and believe it or not, you can get marijuana out of it. But only
Don't tell the NSA that.
I know.
Oh, they know.
So
They know about it.
So I could envision those being at the front of a lot of nursing homes.
Well, look,
Well, what you just hit is interesting because you're talking about the commercialization of this product, and that's really my biggest beef.
Right.
If you were to ask me, number one problem, Patrick County, what do you have? It's the for-profit motivation. So I appreciate the speaker's a free market guy. We find ourselves on the opposite sides of a lot of issues, but I would not think that this is a free market issue when the real results of a for-profit industry like the tobacco companies were to hook kids. Right. We saw it with Joe Camel. Frankly, the alcohol industry, which frankly I have the same feelings towards as I do this budding, no pun intended, marijuana industry, is they're targeting kids. You know, flavored alcohol drinks. You know, Joe Camel. So what?
Let me. I apologize, but let me ask you to bear with us, Red. Today we're talking about legalizing marijuana in Colorado. When we come back, I want to ask Alan if we should legalize much more dangerous drugs like cocaine, heroin, and methamphetamine. Stay with us.